Hello, welcome to Carrow Road, where things are slightly different than they were 3 weeks ago when I was bringing this video to you after a quite exceptional day at Carrow Road, a memorable atmosphere that people will talk about for many years to come after that win over Manchester City, but we possibly should have seen this one coming. It's a 5-1 defeat to Aston Villa. Not quite that it would be so comprehensive, but that a home defeat could well be on the way, given the extent of Norwich's injury crisis and the way things are developing in this Premier League season for them so far. It's been a real tough week, and we have just spoken to Max Aarons and Daniel Farke after the game, and they are really trying to keep calm, really trying not to get too carried away with things, because I think they feel that they just didn't have the defensive assets they needed to counter Aston Villa today. And frankly, Villa were pretty good. That £130 million that they spent in the summer, that early doors has looked like maybe hadn't been money well spent, all of a sudden they were a fluent attacking machine propelled by Jack Grealish and John McGinn, and that £22 million striker Wesley that Dean Smith, maybe coyly in midweek, had maybe played a bit of man management to an extent in terms of suggesting that big price tag may have been weighing heavy on his shoulders. Well, he responded pretty well today with 2 goals. The opening 2 goals, should have had a hat-trick if it was not for a superb Michael McGovern stop. And frankly, Villa overwhelmed Norwich. To look at the stats, they had 12 on target at Carrow Road. Norwich had only lost 1 game here in 13 matches in the league in 2019, and that was to Chelsea, the 3-2 game, where of course Norwich were well in with a shout. Chelsea probably deserved that win, but Norwich were in that game. They showed a lot of the attacking verve that we've appreciated along the way in this sort of ride under Daniel Farke. Unfortunately, this defeat arrives on the day of Daniel Farke's 100th league game in charge. I mean, that's just an aside, but it also has ended up being the joint heaviest defeat of Daniel's reign. It levels the 5-1 loss at Sheffield Wednesday on the final day of the 2017-18 season, that first season under Farke, and it's being that it's at home, of course, that has added emphasis. It's the first time they've conceded 4 goals here since the 4-3 defeat to West Brom in the early stages of last season. It's the heaviest Premier League defeat here since a 6-1 loss to Manchester City in April 2012, I believe. So there's a lot of negatives to go through there, but there's not too much point dwelling on that, and I guess that's the mindset that Daniel and Max were trying to project as they spoke to us, and not putting a brave face on it or hiding from it at all, because they admitted they were second best quite openly, and that things have gone badly for them today. There's no point pretending otherwise. They have lost this game deservedly. Had 58% of possession, so again, we're seeing in the Premier League that possession doesn't bring you wins necessarily. They had 32%, it was, I think, against Manchester City, and won that game. They've dominated possession in the 3 games since, and they've lost them all. 2-0 away at Burnley and Palace, 5-1 here against Aston Villa. So it was kind of entertaining game. 43 shots on goal in total. It was quite open. I would say that's probably mostly down to Norwich just not being able to control things, and that comes down to the defensive midfielder. And today, I'd said before the game, I think I said it in the pre-match video with Connor on Facebook Live, that it's like Daniel has got one untied behind his back at the moment, because of course you want a defensive midfield presence. It would make more sense to push Amadou into midfield, but you can't. You haven't got anyone else to play centre-back at the moment. It had to be Godfrey and Amadou. It had to be Godfrey playing through the pain of a hernia. He's now going to go off in a couple of days and have that operation and hopefully be fit, and that will be dealt with by the time that we arrive at Bournemouth in a couple of weeks' time. And the injury situation is quite ridiculous. Daniel said that it's 12 players, and just to go through the ones who were missing today, you of course got Tim Krul, Ralph Fairman, so Michael McGovern starts in goal and didn't do brilliantly other than that fantastic penalty save, which was at 2-0, and breathed hope around the stadium. It was before half time. It was everyone was thinking if they can just get one here, then it's game on, but that didn't happen. And there was a young lad called Archie Mayer on the bench. He's a Scotland under-19 international, first time he's been on a first-team bench for Norwich or Aberdeen, so a big day for him, but a difficult one. Akin Famewu was also on the bench. He's a young centre-back who can play at left-back, 20 years old. Norwich signed him from Luton in January. And Dan Adshead also travelled with the squad today. The midfielder they signed from Rochdale, England under-19. He wasn't on the bench though. He was sort of emergency cover if needed on the bench. So you've got those two, the keepers, and then of course you've got Klose, Zimmerman, Hanley, all out of contention at centre-back, and that's really the crux of things. And when you add to that you've got Tom Tribal, Alex Tettey and Mario Vrancic all unavailable for this game. Hopefully Tettey and Vrancic are going to be back in contention for the Bournemouth game, hopefully, although Mario Vrancic clearly hasn't played much football for a while now. And Alex Tettey's 33-year-old legs seem to be struggling with a calf problem. Tribal, I don't think there's a chance of him being fit for Bournemouth, but I think there's a possibility that he might be back before the next international break. So that bit of snap in midfield would certainly be very welcome. Who else have we got on top of that? As I say, Godfrey playing with a hernia. Jamal Lewis was playing with elbow ligament damage, and there was one worrying moment in the second half when he'd been clattered by the Villa defender Engels. His first name escapes me. And it looked like he might be going off, but he played on and was okay. And I'd have said Jamal was one of the better players today, certainly going forward anyway, and I think that's covered everything. Todd Cantwell had a bit of a hamstring before going into today's game, but didn't seem to trouble him too much. So there's a lot that needs to clear up in that international break. I'm sure you're all as bored of hearing it as we are of reporting it, and Daniel must be sick of having to talk about injuries. He is sick of injuries. He said it after the Palace game last week, didn't he? And he must be dreading doing his media at the moment, because it's just talking about injuries over and over again, and he really needs some reinforcements on that front before he can start planning really and how he can turn this around. 3 defeats on the spin, conceding 5 at home. You know, these are not the things that he would have been hoping to say, given that they'd had 2 bright games in the opening 5 matches. You know, beating Newcastle comprehensively, and of course beating Manchester City, pushing Chelsea close, but now things have taken a real downturn, and it is worrying. I think that's the main word. Of course it's a disappointing day, but it's worrying going forward, because as far as I'm concerned, unless they can get some midfield muscle in, defensive midfielder Amadou, you would have thought, or Tettey in against Bournemouth, and you're going to travel there worried, because they just don't seem to be able to stop teams attacking that defence. And it is a young defence, you know. Say we speak to Max, he's 19, Jamal Lewis is 21, Ben Godfrey's 21. You know, we all know how much potential they've shown and how much they've achieved at a young age, but they are now right in the thick of it in the Premier League, and that's putting a lot on young shoulders, to be frank. They need some experience and guidance in there, and of course we know that that's not going to come from Tim Klose this season, probably. Christoph Zimmerman probably not before Christmas. So that Grant Hanley groin injury, he's going to see a specialist about that this week or next week, because that's been troubling for quite a long while now, and they, you know, whether it's his abilities that have been questioned or not, maybe he hasn't been playing to his full potential, of course, maybe this injury has been part of that, but they need some experience like that in there. They need a leader, they need someone to boss things around and who just can hold the shape of things, because you look at the first goal today and Anwar El Ghazi puts a cross in from the right, he cut back on to his left foot and looped it in. Godfrey just misses the header. Amadou panics and tries to get to the ball when McGovern's already sliding in, so they end up colliding, and Wesley's able to miss the both of them with his finish and put it in the bottom corner. And that panic was there again. Amadou totally out of position for the second one, which Jack Grealish squared along the left byline. I think it was Grealish, might have been Hourihan actually, sorry, and Wesley had an easy finish from close range. So there's no point going through it blow by blow today, because I think we know that the overarching issue here is that injury situation and getting some bodies back in. So if you can get to Bournemouth and have Krull, Fairman, Hanley, maybe unlikely, probably at this point. Hopefully Godfrey back, Lewis surviving internationals, Cantwell getting that hamstring rested, although he's got England under 21 duty. Tettey and Vrancic, they would be massive. O'Neill, Hernandez, Daniel has said there's a chance he'd be back in full training before Bournemouth, but whether that means he'd be back involved, I don't know. as I say, it did finish 5-1. There was a goal. Josip Dermic, I'm sure it's not one that he particularly enjoyed, but he did well, closed Tom Heaton down with, I think it was 6 minutes to go. I think Heaton maybe lost the ball a little bit in the sun, which was right in his eyes at that point, but Dermic had done well closing down, showed the right intent, won the ball, and then he had the easy job of just rolling the ball into an empty net in front of the Barclay, which is sort of greeted with ironic cheers. I don't think the Carrow Road crowd turned too much on the Norwich players, really. They were okay. Of course there was moans and groans. There's only so far people can be positive in this sort of a situation, but yeah, people didn't get on top of things too much. Daniel still went round the pitch and applauded and thanked everyone, and there were still plenty of people here to reciprocate the applause. You know, there's still a lot of credit in the bank, but you know, the thoughts of survival in the Premier League as we stand here today in the relegation zone after 8 games, it's worrying. That's the big word. I think that's pretty much everything covered from this game. But as I've mentioned, there it's international duty now, isn't it? Dermot goes off, Pookie, Cantwell and Aarons are with the under-21s, McLean with Scotland, Lewis and McGovern with Northern Ireland. If anybody else picks up an injury during this next 10 days, 2 weeks, then yeah, you can have some pretty unhappy Norwich fans, and that's how it feels tonight, unfortunately. An unhappy Carrow Road after a 5-1 defeat to Aston Villa. We will, of course, bring you all the analysis and try to look forward as much as we can throughout this 2 weeks. We'll keep on top of all that international action. Head to PinkUn.com for Daniel's full reaction, Paddy's pointers, Colin's match report, all the usual stuff. And do let us know what you think. Get in touch. Tweet us at the PinkUn or on our personal accounts. We'll be recording a podcast probably this evening, so if you've got any questions, any comments, then do get them into us. Paddy will be doing his usual Q&A on Monday. There'll be plenty of opportunities to pick over the bones of this one, but unfortunately it's an unhappy day at Carrow Road, and we will start turning attentions to Bournemouth after that international action is finished. Thanks for watching.